morning and welcome to the Point. Much has been made about the impact the Tea Party will have on Election Day this November. There is no doubt that across the country and in Florida, they have already had an impact on which candidates have been nominated in Republican primaries. But the Tea Party is less political party and more split grassroots organization. Our guest this week is Marianne Moran from Tea Party in Action, not to be confused with the South Florida Tea Party. We'll hear from Marianne in just a moment, but first, News Channel 5's John Shainman has more on the Tea Party's evolution.
Over the past year, there's been a lot of news surrounding the Tea Party movement, born in opposition to government stimulus spending and the president's health care overhaul.
We'll keep clinging to our Constitution and our guns and religion, and you can keep the change.
Former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin has been a figurehead, but it is at the local grassroots level that the movement works to draw strength. In Indian River County, more than 4,000 people turned out to a post-tax day Tea Party event.
We're concerned about, again, the spending and the debt that it carries on into the future and how we're going to address that.
But just because the Tea Party is thought of as a fiscally conservative movement, it doesn't necessarily tie them in lockstep with the Republican Party. While the GOP is expected to benefit from the Tea Party movement, some Tea Party-backed candidates could actually help Democrats by splitting the conservative vote. And one Tea Party organization doesn't work in tandem with another.
My name is Senator Wilkinson, and I can't be bought either. But this guy is flip-flopping.
When gubernatorial candidate Rick Scott made an August appearance in West Palm Beach with the Tea Party in Action group, the man in charge of the South Florida Tea Party kept trying to interrupt his remarks. Turns out Everett Wilkinson was supporting Scott's primary challenger, Bill McCollum. Scott won the primary, so the question here and in many other states, will Tea Party-backed candidates be the voters' drink of choice in November? John Shainman, WPTV, News Channel 5.
And now we welcome Marianne Moran of Tea Party in Action. Thank you very much, Marianne, for being here this morning.
Thank you for having me.
And let's get to the point. Your group has a questionnaire for candidates this year, but the website name for the questionnaire seems to indicate that you have one person targeted in particular. Why does your group seem to have it in for Charlie Crist?
Well, actually, endcharliesbailout.com, which I think you're referring to, is a coalition of Tea Parties across the state of Florida. Who are specifically geared to ending the bailout of the U.S. Sugar Corporation. There's a lot of problems with the deal. Number one, they're paying the U.S. Sugar Corporation 2006 rates for their land. No one across Florida is getting 2006 rates for their land. Why should the U.S. Sugar Corporation?
Yeah, is it more than just that? Because I know that's been a big thing, was you've been highly opposed to the Everglades deal.
Well, it's also a sweetheart deal for Charlie Crist's biggest campaign donors, the U.S. Sugar Corporation.
They were big contributors to McCollum's campaign as well.
That's
I mean,
true.
there have been other candidates who were supported as well by U.S. Sugar, right?
That's true, but Charlie Crist's main political campaign donor is the U.S. Sugar Corporation. He appointed all the board members of the South Florida Water Management District. And another problem we have with the deal is it's taxation without representation. We don't elect the members to the board of the South Florida Water Management District, yet they tax us and control a $1 billion budget.
What distinguishes Tea Party in Action from this kind of overall umbrella Tea Party movement? I mean, there are so many factions, I think it can be almost confusing to people.
It is. There are a lot of factions across Florida and across the nation. Tea Party in Action advocates for fiscal responsibility, limited government, and free markets. Our biggest issue is advocating for a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution. We feel that no amount of fiscal discipline on our end, we have a balanced budget here on the state of Florida, but nothing's going to save us from the flood of federal debt that's going to be coming our way unless we do something and get a federal balanced budget amendment to the U.S. Constitution.
How different are you from the South Florida Tea Party?
Well, South Florida Tea Party was one of our coalition members to end Charlie's bailout. They are active in South Florida, and a lot of us work together for different missions. We work together to pass and advocate in certain legislation in Tallahassee last session, and I look forward to working with them next session.
Some have been critical of the Tea Party overall as being kind of this primarily Republican phenomenon. Are there Democrats, are there independents in Florida that your group is backing and that are certainly part of your group?
Well, we don't endorse any candidates, but yes, there is this misnomer that the Tea Party is just a Republican issue. It's not. One of our biggest problems was George W. Bush, a Republican. He passed the TARP legislation in that dire October, which I think he said something to the effect of he's going to abandon free market principles to save the free market. That made us social conservatives skin crawl. That's not what we're about. That's not what this country is about.
I mean, does having Sarah Palin, who is closely aligned with a lot of Tea Party-supported candidates in other parts of the country, does that have any bearing on it as well? I mean, she could be a polarizing figure, and does that automatically make people assume anything under the Tea Party name is, you know, staunch Republican and more aligned with someone like Sarah Palin?
Perhaps. That might have a lot to do with it. But you know, Tea Parties in general, a lot of them love Sarah Palin, a lot of them don't. Again, we're going back to different factions of the Tea Party, but at the ground, at the core, we're trying to push fiscally responsible legislation on a state, local, and national level.
How successful have you been so far?
Well, we successfully advocated for 2 bills in Tallahassee that were passed here in Florida, the Healthcare Freedom Act and Senate Bill 10, the Article 5 application for a federal balanced budget. So those 2 are very successful. And right now we're working in other states to pass that same legislation. So,
is it hard recruiting people? And having them understand what you're doing and having them support you and kind of get on board? Or is it becoming easier with the economy in the state that it's in?
I think it's becoming easier, Kelly. The main reason is people are looking to Greece. They are seeing that Greece debt to GDP ratio, if we stay on our same spending habits, we will be there in 15 years. And they fear for the future of our country, and they want to return to the fiscal responsibility legislation and roots of our country. You know, George Washington once said that if you pass on debt from one generation to another, it's morally repugnant. I agree with our first president, and I believe most Americans do as well.
Where does the Tea Party in general, and your group would be part of that too, where is the funding coming from? Where does the money come from?
Well, we don't release our donors. We're a 501c4. We don't have to release our donors, and a lot of donors have asked not to. But it's not difficult to find people who don't want their taxes raised and want to stand for fiscal responsibility.
You say that you all, the Tea Party in action, does not endorse candidates. But clearly, obviously, I know you have issues with Charlie Crist, but I mean, are there some that you are, I mean, do you align yourself with anyone? I mean, come on, you've got to be supporting some people out there, even if it's not publicly, because they're kind of, you know, more aligned with what you're trying to accomplish.
No, we don't endorse candidates, but we'll definitely lobby them hard and hold their feet to the fire when they're in office to make sure that they've accomplished what they're promising us when they're candidates.
You're only 29 years old.
Correct.
Why did you get involved? And how did you get involved? I mean, for a 29-year-old, that's, you know, I think it's exceptional.
Well, after law school, I tell people that I'm following in the footsteps of Barack Obama, except I'm becoming a community organizer, except instead of organizing Acorn, I organize tea parties. But I did practice a little bit, but really it just started with a bunch of friends in a bar talking about and watching Rick Santelli's rant and wanting to do something about it. And it turned into one of, you know, the largest organization in the state with a huge email database. So it's a movement. It's growing. There were 2 million people there at the 9/12 rally last September,
including you,
including me.
Yeah,
I was one. Right. And this September, it'll be the same, and hopefully we'll hold the feet to the fire in November.
Marianne Moran, Tea Party in Action, thank you very much for being with us today. We appreciate your time.